I've always felt politically homeless in the two dominant party system of the United States. Just to pick a few points to explain why, I'm pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and pro-guaranteed basic income, against the death penalty, against socialized housing and food supply, and against property and sales taxes. I recognize that the perfect cannot be turned into the enemy of the good. As such, I sometimes approve a sales or property tax that is funding something I agree with, even though I think there are better ways for our government to raise and distribute money, or some other compromise. This means that I have watched 7 elections that I remember relatively clearly, and I have felt like an outsider with no political allies in all of them. Political alliances always seemed so arbitrary to me. Military, corporate, and religious allegiance have historically been seen as barely compatible with each other, and yet conservatives are often defined in terms of either their commitment to strengthening the military, or the corporate sector, or the religious institutions. Religion has historically been associated with promoting healthcare and education, yet the political lines of our current world will put those that vote to increase the hospital budget and those that vote to protect religious ideals on opposite sides of the political divide. All too often, sides get chosen based on who grabbed an issue first rather than any compatibility with previous decisions the party had. Then, there are the times when the parties will switch on an issue. Before COVID, all of the anti-vax people I knew were liberal-leaning politically. For instance, Robert Kennedy, famous for his anti-vax position, has always identified as a Democrat. The same is true for Del Bigtree. They found their way in through the alternative medicine crowd. When COVID shots became a problem for some conservative voices, that changed. Now it is squarely considered a far-right position. This goes to show that political affiliations are about expediency for those in charge, not the ideology of their constituents. The Democratic or Republican Party would gladly drop your personal favorite issue if the right person with the right clout on the other side came along interested in picking it up. Party loyalty is for fools. We even got a small taste of this in the last election cycle. Republicans dropped the pro-life articles that had been the staple of their alliance with religious America from their party, and the Democratic candidates backpedaled on the left side traditional gun reduction position. Both of these were efforts to get more votes out of the center, those of us with the rationality, intelligence, and would not to have any party affiliation. In this exchange, the Democratic side seemed, at least to me, as an outside observer, to give more ground on their wishy-washy issue. Harris and Walz both tried to present themselves as on the side of gun owners, where Trump and Vance simply said that they had already delivered all they promised by moving the abortion question to the states. On the topic of abortion access, the blue team doubled down hard on their position as the ones that will restore rights, taking us back to the golden age when all was actually right with the world and things were as they were meant to be, the way that is right and true, which is typically considered a conservative approach to politics. The interesting result was that the red team picked up votes, and the blue team lost votes in every state. There are lots of variables in something like this. I've got my own ideas about what actually drove people to abandon the blue side of the spectrum. My ideas aren't very popular, though. The leadership that lost is going to go home and strategize, and they aren't consulting me. For decades, the Republican Party has held a stranglehold on certain religious communities by being the pro-life party. That's why it surprised so many that they abandoned the issue. It kinda surprised me, but upon reflection, I don't think it should have. More and more of my red-leaning friends have been influenced by libertarian political thought. More and more of my libertarian friends have been turning Republican on the basis that they're the lower taxes, fewer government programs party, at least in their slogans. To a greater and greater degree, the Republican side is the side saying, "You can't tell me what to do with what's mine." And what about the blue team? There are so many issues in which the blue team is invested in controlling how we live our lives. They oppose homeschooling our children, support mandatory vaccines, and wanted to require masks in public. Without getting into which issues I support and oppose, as an outsider I've always seen the Republican side as the let everyone make their own choices parent and the Democratic side as the we know what's best for you even when you don't parent. There were, however, a small number of exceptions where the parties would trade disciplinary roles, and abortion has been one of those. Except, now the Republican side has relaxed their position as the strict, rulemaking, restrictive parent in the topic of abortion. Politics abhors a vacuum, and doubling down as the permissive parent for abortion and guns simultaneously didn't get the Democrats what they wanted. It may not have been the thing that lost them ground towards their goals, but it certainly didn't help them gain ground towards their goals. As a politically homeless, apolitical citizen that doesn't watch the news as often as I probably should, I'm in no position to make a prediction. That said, speculation is always a fun game and comes with the added benefit that I'm totally fine with being wrong. As I look at our situation, I wonder if the blue team isn't going to start to promote a pro-life agenda in the hopes of roping in some religiously affiliated votes. There are certain ways this might actually make a more consistent platform. As I pointed out, the Democrats are the ones that have been leaning towards being the stricter, government knows best party for most of my life. They also support programs that aid the poor and support more immigration than the red team, ideas that traditionally, before the modern political division, were seen as the religious position. It's not all that hard to see the Democrats taking over as the party of religious people, at least not for me as an outside observer. If that happens, it will be interesting to see the results. American history has had other realignments based on particular points. Modern politics has had issues which left deeply religious people like me feeling homeless. What other topics would be included in this switch? Of those issues that might not switch, which would still be deal breakers for the conservative, Calvinist, post-millennial, dispensationalists that dominate the religious political conversion in America? How many religious people would we discover are not actually driven primarily by pro-life thinking after all? As someone from the outside looking in, I'm honestly curious about how these changes would play out, and I would love to hear your thoughts on the subject.